Hey, I just listened to Powell's comments from today's testimony in front of the Senate Banking Committee. I did not listen to it today. I just read a little snippet about it online when I made my video, where he says, he was asked specifically about MMT, modern monetary theory. He says, first he says, well, I haven't really read anything about it, any kind of a, an in-depth workup of the theory, which I'm sure he's lying. I'm sure he heard about it. Anyway, he said, then he just goes on to kind of offhandedly dismiss it, saying that the notion that a currency issuing nation can run up deficits and that doesn't matter. He says that's just flat out wrong. But again, he doesn't provide any rationale, reasoning, or justification for that. And the fact of the matter is, you can go back throughout history. There is not one single example. Not one single example. And by the way, back, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years ago or something like that, that book came out from Reinhard Rogoff, 700 Years of History of Government Borrowing and all kinds of things that happened. And there was not one example in that book of a sovereign currency issuing nation with all its debts denominated in its own currency that was forced into involuntary insolvency. Not one single example. So for him to say something like that, for Powell to say something like that, is just flat out his opinion, and he's wrong. He's completely wrong. And then the other thing, which I mentioned in my video earlier, and I think I was a little confused on what he said. Because I didn't hear what he said, but basically he said, it's not the Fed's job, basically paraphrasing, he said it's not the Fed's job to facilitate something like this. And I think in that comment, he was under the assumption that the Fed would have to keep interest rates low so that the government would be able to do this, to be able to finance the debt, the deficit, which again is wrong, completely wrong. There is no financing of the deficit. The spending is in the sovereign currency. The sale of government securities is merely a reserve drain. The sale of government securities is also funded by the very dollars or currency that the government spends into existence. What is he talking about? Doesn't matter what the interest rate is. The ability for the government to pay the interest on whatever securities it issues is a moot point. It's not even something that needs to be discussed, because they pay it the same way they pay for everything else. It's an accounting entry. So the guy is completely wrong. And, it's classic. I mean, this is your standard, the mainstream economics taught in these places like Harvard and Stanford. These guys have gotten everything wrong. None of their theories are observable in the empirical evidence. They have to make up special cases just to explain away the fact that none of these things are observable. I mean, any credible science that wouldn't be able to show its theory observable in empirical evidence would be laughed out of existence if they didn't go back to the drawing board and say, hey, something's wrong, except for these economic nut jobs. So the guy's wrong, plain and simple.